Hello? Hello, Internet world. Are you out there? Can you hear us? Hello.
Are we going? Is this it?
We're it. We're live. I'm Luke. You're Max. Who are we talking to? Wave from the audience. Is it? It is not live. Hold on. We are live. Yeah, a tiny bit of delay. We're on? Okay. All right, now we are live. Hello, Internet.
Hello.
All right, I'm Luke. This is Max. We're going to answer some questions and talk about shit. So if you have questions, you can submit them through the Hangout questions interface. Do not tweet them at us. Otherwise, Max and I are going to sit here and talk to each other for an hour and record it. So Max, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm really regretting not having made coffee this morning. This is a pretty early morning for me.
Oh yeah, it's well, the time difference between New York and Chicago is what, like 3 hours? So it's like 6 a.m. for you or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty severe.
Were you out in your post-Memorial Day party mode last night?
What did I do last night? I took a bath and I read 2 issues of the New Yorker, so it was pretty crazy. I think I had some green tea, so it was pretty, yeah. It was
Wait.
pretty intense. I don't want to brag. It was a pretty crazy night.
I need to stop. You have a bathtub?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Chicago apartments, man.
Oh man, you probably also have a dishwasher too, don't you?
I do have a dishwasher. I have a very small dishwasher, and the caveat on the bathtub is it's not like a fancy bathtub. It's just like a shower bathtub.
Still.
Someday I aspire to have an apartment with just like a dedicated bathtub where you can take a bath and watch The New Yorker. This is good. Is this the content that people came for? Are you helping people?
All right.
So Luke, you have to launch your project on a Tuesday for it to be successful.
Yes. Yeah. That's
what they say.
So yeah, if you have any questions for us regarding games on Kickstarter, we are happy to be of service to you. Max is the creator or one of the creators of Cards Against Humanity. They ran a successful Kickstarter project where they raised something like $14 back in what, 2009? 2010?
That seems about the right decade. I don't know.
Okay, so our first question has come in from Tom Eastman. What do you guys think about the number of tiers for games projects? Are $1 tiers useful, and are early bird pre-order tiers a good idea? So, Max, I know you have lots of thoughts on this. So what do you think about the number of tiers for games projects, Max?
Well, I definitely have a strong opinion on this. I think that the best project has the smallest possible number of rewards to like creatively do the project. And I think it's really harmful to projects to have like extra rewards. There's a million reasons for it. The most important reason is it's really hard to run a Kickstarter project, and it's really hard to just make like a good creative thing, regardless of the Kickstarter project. And if you add a bunch of rewards where you're making T-shirts and coffee mugs and swag and pins and stickers and stuff, like you're now creating all of this huge amount of work that you have to do. That's not the album you want to record, the game that you want to make. So you're just adding all of these challenges to yourself, and you're kind of compounding the difficulty of your Kickstarter project. That's the most important reason. The other reasons I don't love doing like a lot of extra rewards are I think they distract creatively from what you're trying to do. I think a great Kickstarter project is really focused, and it tells a clean, simple story about the thing that you want to make and why you believe in it. And also, I think that the one, specifically, so this question asks about like, is a $1 tier useful? Specifically, I don't like doing a $1 tier because I don't want people to give me $1. I want that, unless that's honestly what I need to make something. I would want people to if I'm making a game, I want people to get a copy of the game. That's why I'm doing the project. The other thing is, if you do a $1 reward, it's like it's nice, like show a gesture of support, give $1. But there's this thing called price anchoring, where it's like the first price you see kind of anchors the the relative expense of all the other prices. So if the first thing you see is $1, even if you have a really reasonable, $10 or $20 game that you want people to get, it could seem really expensive next to a $1 reward. So I just my advice to people is always skip those like dumb, $1 I'll give you a high five rewards, and also skip the rewards where it's like $10,000 I'll fly out to your city and dinner with you. Those things aren't the creative project that you want to make. So just don't do them. Just worry about making a great game or a great film or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, on my project, I did not, either of my projects, I didn't offer $1 tiers or high five tiers or anything like that. I have a similar philosophy that I'd like to just focus on what I'm making. That said, I understand why people do it, and I understand, on big projects that sometimes people just want to be a part of the project and they just kind of want to follow along and see the updates and comment. I'd also like to point out that the system, Kickstarter as a system, supports that you can always, pledge whatever you want to a project and not take a reward. So
Right. Whether there's a $1 reward or not, people who just want to get the backer updates, they can just do that. You don't need to create a reward tier for it.
right,
Yeah, that's a good point.
right,
What
and
about early bird pre-order tiers? Do you have any feelings on that?
yeah, I mean, I see it used very effectively, but honestly, I see it used effectively in projects where there's high demand for what they're doing, or that it's a very high price point for the item in general. For most projects, though, I see a kind of, maybe not the best outcome for the project, where their early bird reward tiers are sitting half full by the end of the project. So they're basically just they're leaving. I hate to say this, they're leaving money on the table where those people probably would have pledged the extra $5 to be a part of the project and would have been happy to help the project become funded for what the thing is worth. So I think unless you have like a really big ticket, very popular project, or maybe you're going to release your something that you're making in tiers, like you're going to have a release, a batch in 3 months, a batch in 6 months, a batch in 9 months. I think otherwise early bird tiers aren't necessary. I've also heard about folks, creating disappointment with early bird tiers, just that people are like who come into the project later feel like they missed out and feel like that there's no reason to back the project now because they missed out on the deal, and that's no fun. I mean, it's not a great attitude in general, but also I understand where they're coming from. Like, why back the project if they they can't get in on that deal? So just something to think about as as you build your project and you think about what you're making.
More like I would also say like more abstractly, I always think a Kickstarter project is best when it's kind of framed as like a gift exchange, where it's like backers will come in and give you money to support your creative vision, and then in exchange you'll give them the gift of one of these rewards. And that's like a super intuitive economic model that human civilization used for millions of years before capitalism. But I think it's really easy to employ a lot of like gimmicks on your project page, like early bird rewards and stretch goals and things like that. And that to me, that gets it out of a gift exchange and it makes it more of like a store, where it's like you're just trying to extract as much money as you can from people. And the downside of that for you as a creator is, I think it sets expectations in a way that you might not like. If it's a store, people expect you to do everything, like a store, like on time. They're not going to forgive mistakes. They're not going to be with you as supporters as you try and make like a new creative thing. And I've seen a lot of projects develop like a bad relationship between creator and backers, just because there were those mismatched expectations. So I always try to steer clear of those kind of gimmicks, like like stretch goals and things to try and early bird rewards and things to try and get money out of people. Because I want to try and keep the project in the frame of like a gift exchange where people are supporting a piece of art that I want to make, and then I'm supporting them or giving them a gift in exchange for their support. Yeah. Oh, Luke, I can't hear you. Let's see here. Yep, there we go. You're back. You're back, Luke.
Am I good?
Yep, I think your audio dropped out for a second.
Okay.
Cool.
Sorry about that. All right, technical difficulties there. All right, so let's answer Eric Portney's question. So do you feel that when larger companies use Kickstarter to fund games, the focus shifts from funding a dream into more of just a pre-order system, for example, Harmonix, Queen Games, or Reaper Minis? So the short answer is no. I think that Kickstarter as a platform is incredibly robust. I think it's and I think it's capable of. I think that the implication here is Kickstarter only for big companies now, or is it only, or can small dreams not use Kickstarter anymore? No, that's not the case. If you look on the site, most of the projects are small, and is it and can Kickstarter be used by a larger organization to judge, to say, hey, do you guys want us to make this thing? Absolutely. Why not? It's Harmonix's game Amplitude isn't any less valid because they came to their fans and said, hey, we would like to make this game again, but we don't know if you guys are still interested in it. That doesn't sound like a pre-order to me. As far as Reaper Minis goes, making molds for plastic minis is expensive. It requires a capital investment for a company like Reaper Minis. So for them to go to their fans and say, hey, we would like to make all these minis, but we don't know what the demand is. We don't know if it's worth it for us. So do you guys want this set of minis? You want this set of minis? Like, doesn't sound like a pre-order to me either. It sounds like them engaging with the people who like their miniatures in a way that they haven't been able to before. Yeah, I don't think. I think the platform is capable of handling all of these different types of interactions, and I don't think those particular interactions are pre-orders.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think I actually think it's amazing to see bigger companies or bigger institutions creating that kind of relationship with their fans and being open to that kind of a patronage and support and level of involvement from people who enjoy what they make. Like that's how the world should work. It's weird it's weird that things get funded by studios and distributors and all of that nonsense, and that people who play games aren't the ones who are deciding what gets made. I mean, it's weird that it worked the other way for so long.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've talked to so many project creators who work for kind of these mid-sized companies like Reaper, who are so excited to have this opportunity and who talk about what a change Kickstarter has provided for them, where now instead of just kind of stumbling blind into the dark with like something that they want to make, they can take it out into the public early on in the process and talk to them about it and get their feedback and interact with them in a really positive way, in a way that makes the relationship with their fans better, in a way that makes what they're making better. All right, let's go back to Tom Eastman. We got another question.
Question is, if a project already has a demo version complete, is it good to make that available during the campaign? And then I guess similar, he wants to also, well, we could talk about that first. There's kind of a two-part question.
Sure.
Well, for Cards Against Humanity, when we started that, it was still a time when games weren't as established on Kickstarter, so it was still very, very kind of weird to be making a game on Kickstarter. And we had this thing that we thought was pretty funny, and it was like a good fit for our inside jokes and our sense of humor. But was really, it's hard to, like, when you have something funny, it's really hard to convince other people that it's funny, because the more that you say it's funny, the more everyone becomes suspicious. So we just posted the whole PDF of the game online, and we said, here, print it on your printer and make it for free. And that was really effective for us. I think that's the best. I think that was the best marketing we ever did for Cards Against Humanity. And in fact, like, it worked so well before and during the Kickstarter that we've just decided to keep it up, and it'll probably be up for free for the whole life of the game. So in our case, it definitely worked, because our game was all about, like, the content. And it was all about sort of proving that we were good writers and that we can make this funny experience. And we wanted people to see it. Like, there was only, we really couldn't say, like, it's hilarious. We had to go say, look for yourself and see if it makes you laugh. And we were confident in it. I think for some other games, like, I think for some video games, if it's like a really narrative, single-player video game, you're kind of giving away the farm if you make the whole thing playable. So, like, to give one example, like Kentucky Route Zero, right? I think that if they had shown the whole first episode of Kentucky Route Zero, you're really diminishing people's enjoyment of the game. Or if they had made that available as a demo, you're reducing people's kind of incentive to participate in the Kickstarter and fund it. So I think it just depends on what you're making, and it depends on the context, and you have to kind of be a little coy. You want to show enough to get people excited and to make people believe in what you're doing, but not so much that you kind of fill their whole appetite for it.
Right.
And to give an example of a project that I thought was really, really exceedingly well done without having a demo, it was Hyper Light Drifter. That was a game that used art and animated GIFs and writing and some gameplay footage to really give you a feeling of what you were going to get. I mean, you look at that page and you can just sort of quickly scroll up and down and be like, I get what this game is about, and a lot of people were into it. That project did really well.
Yeah, exactly. Hyper Light Drifter is a really excellent example of this. So last year, or maybe 2 years ago, I saw Jesse Schell speak at PAX Dev, and he actually gave numbers about this kind of engagement, the kind of pre-launch engagement for games. And he talked about basically if a game just had no indication of gameplay, if a game had a trailer, and if a game had a demo. And so he showed the kind of the returns on each of those, and games that had a demo did worse as far as engagement and sales than games that just had a trailer. And in fact, games that had trailers did better than games that even had both had trailer and demo. So I think the key here is that you want to provide people with just enough to get them excited about what you're making and get them really interested and wanting to see more. You do not want to give people the complete experience of what you're making before you've made it so that they walk away satisfied. It's a little marketing-y, but it's the truth. Like you want to tease people and get them excited and then gratify that excitement once you have the thing that you're making.
So the second part of this question, I think this will be a pretty quick answer, is what about having the video for this is specifically for a game, what about having the project video only show prototype gameplay versus fake gameplay, like basically like, a flash animation of what the game could look like versus what it looks like?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think on a Kickstarter video that you should show some indication of how your game is played. Even though Hyper Light Drifter didn't offer a demo or anything like that, it was very clear how you played that game. You're a badass dude with your Hyper Light sword and your Hyper Light pistol. And they did that through animated GIFs and through art and whatnot. I think that's integral to just being honest with your fans about what you're making, to show that you've done your work, that you've thought about your game, that you have that you have a really good concept for what you're doing. People will trust you more when they come to your project if you can show them that you've thought in depth about the gameplay for what you're making.
Yeah, I think a big part of a good Kickstarter project is just managing people's expectations. So, if you show gameplay that you fake in Flash and you haven't ever done any work to establish if you'll be able to create that game or know how difficult it's going to be, you're setting expectations way too high for what you can actually produce, and you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. Similarly, if you have an amazing game and you don't show enough of it to get people excited, you're setting expectations too low, and people won't be excited about it. So, Kickstarter project is one of the things that makes me excited about Kickstarter is it kind of reminds me of like working on a political campaign of like the whole thing is you're trying to thread that needle of expectations being just right, where people are excited and they like what you're making and they believe in it, but they're not so sky high that you're going to disappoint them no matter what you do. And a great example of like a project that managed expectations really well was the Double Fine adventure. And what they did was they actually created a documentary of the making of the game. So if you were a backer and you were invested in the game, you could actually see the game being made, and your expectations were right in line with what was being created. So there wasn't this scenario where people's imaginations ran away from what the project was going to be, but it also kept people excited, even though the project took a little longer than they estimated. So kind of kept everyone happy, and then it set expectations really well for what the final product would be.
All right. Cool. So let's go on to Gordon Emerson's question. I know there are plenty of successful game Kickstarters from relatively small teams like Superhot and Last Life. If you haven't looked at Superhot, you should definitely take a look at it. It's all your Matrix fantasies in a video game. What do you think of the key to making a game Kickstarter successful, especially for a small team? I think having the best idea ever is the key. Is the absolute.
Well, that's just it, right? Like if you with any organization or any with whatever tools you have to make a project, you've got to know your strengths and weaknesses. So being a small team, there's obvious weaknesses, right? Like you have to manage your scope. You only have so many man hours you can put into the game. Like you only have so much of your life you can give over to the project. But your strengths are with a small team is the creative vision can be really weird and different and out there. Like it can truly be an artistic expression of one person or a few people. And I think that's use Last Life as an example. Like that is a really specific creative vision of one dude who came up with this game and put the art style together. And I think it shows, right? Like a team of 50 people could not have made Last Life. They would have sort of polished out all of the rough edges that make that game kind of cool and interesting. But it's Last Life is I haven't seen a Superhot yet, but Last Life is a great example of an art game, and it can only be pulled off by a really tiny team working on it. And I think that came through on the Kickstarter project. Like watching that project, you get a very clear sense of what Sam thinks about the game and what his scope is and why he believes in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Going into a project on Kickstarter with your eyes open, and just really not over-promising. And like one of your strengths as a small team is going to be making the game that you want to make, right? Following through in your vision, right? You're going to have the agility and adaptability and just kind of strength of purpose to make your game, because that's what your team is for. That's all your team wants to do, and you're going to be very, you're very in sync about that. Making T-shirts, making maquettes, making graphic novels about your game, or all these other things are going to increase your funding goal, for one. Two, they're going to just distract you from the thing that you want to be doing, that you should be doing, which is making your game. So just, when you are focusing on your strengths, realize that your core strength is making the game. And you may want to please everyone and do all these immensely cool things, but really what we all want is for you to make your game. I think that perhaps offering all those things might make the Kickstarter more successful. It might overfund the Kickstarter or something like that, but it's going to add stress to the team on the other end of the project, like once it's funded and once you're trying to put it all together, and you don't want more stress. All right. So
one other thing about the key to if you have a small team. One thing, a small team usually leaves out like marketing people and like you definitely don't have like a PR person or whatever, and you cannot let that fall through the cracks. So again, to use like Last Life as an example, like something like 2 months before that project launched, Sam emailed me and asked if I would put like a quote on the project. So he was already thinking well far in advance of the project. How is he going to give this thing credibility? How is he going to tell the story? How is he going to convey his excitement about the project, and how is he going to get the word out about it? So you can't let that fall through the cracks. Like, unfortunately, that is a big hurdle with a small team. Everyone has to pick up the slack. Everyone, developers, artists, everyone who's working on it has got to be trying to find new ways to tell the story about what you're making and share it with people.
Agreed. All right, so we're about halfway through our Q&A, and I think it's time for Bruce Stringer's question. Bruce asks a very, very important question. He says, "Hey Max and Luke, this is Bruce from Team Weasel Games." So he's clearly savvy at marketing since he's plugging himself. And he says, I had a question for Luke. Is this your idea of fun? And so Bruce, I'd like to look directly into your eyes. I'm going to give you a minute to lock eyes with me here. And I'm going to lean in, and I'm going to say, yes, Bruce, it is my idea of fun. Okay, moving on. Tom Eastman asks, would you guys recommend having developers talk to the camera in the video, or is it better to let gameplay do the talking? Well, if you weren't creeped out by me looking into your eyes there, Tom Eastman, then maybe you should talk to the video. I don't know. I personally think that the static shot talking head video is not necessary. I want to see, I want to see 90 seconds of, of gameplay and art with, maybe somebody cut into it talking about it.
I heard. I heard this on a Kickstarter panel a long time ago, and it just always stuck with me. Of like, if your Kickstarter video doesn't have cuts in it, like if it's like a single, you talking into the webcam, you're not trying hard enough. Like, the bar has just been raised for the quality of video that people expect on a Kickstarter project. But actually, I kind of disagree with Luke here. I always want to see the first thing when I hit play. I want to see the face of a human being who says, "This is my project. I believe in it. Please help me." You could say that in literally in 10 seconds or less, but I want to see that. Like, I want to see a connection to the artist who's making something before I see the special effects of whatever they're making. I mean, yeah, I think that's still pretty emotionally important for me of looking at a good video.
I don't disagree. I mean, I want to see all your lovely faces in the Kickstarter videos. I want them to be personal. It is a very personal process. I also like to see what you're working on. You're all very lovely, but I'm obsessed with your games. I'm obsessed to see, what you're making. So that's what I'm looking for when I look at a Kickstarter project. And that's not as a reviewer or anything. That's just as somebody who backs a lot of Kickstarter projects.
Well, and also, and again, sort of zooming out, like big picture of what you're doing with a Kickstarter project. I always look at, people back. I always look at why does someone back a Kickstarter project, and there's kind of two main reasons for it. The first is they want to get a reward that they're selecting for putting in their money, and that's half of the reason they back it. But the other half is that they want to be part of the story of making something that they love. They want to. When you back a project on Kickstarter, you want to feel like you are voting with your dollar for the kind of world that you want to exist, the kind of game you want to play, the kind of products you want to get made, and that's really empowering for people, and that's part of the fun and the joy of like backing a Kickstarter project. So as a project creator, you need to give people that feeling of that they are helping you achieve a dream, that they're doing something that you really believe in. And I think if you completely skip over the part of the video where you get to meet you as the creator, you're kind of depriving people of that experience of supporting art that they believe in.
Cool. Rad. All right. Let's get back to Eric Portney then. All right. So Eric says, thank you for your answers. Question for Luke. When vetting games projects to approve, what are the red flags, warning signs that would cause you to deny a project from going forward? This is pretty simple. So one, just the world should know that when I'm reviewing games projects, I'm only looking for guideline stuff. We don't review on content or like if it's a good project or anything like that, or if I like your game, none of that. I'm just looking to see if you have porn or weapons or pharmaceuticals or charity or things along those lines in your project. So so read our guidelines. Don't put any of those things in your project. And a lot of people like to read the guidelines and say, well, I'm making a charity project, but and I know it's not permitted, but I'm doing it this way. Can I do it anyway? And it hurts. I don't like to have to say no because you clearly read the guidelines, and I appreciate that. It means a lot to me that you read the guidelines, but I still can't let it go forward. One of the most crushing conversations I had to have with a creator was the creator of Moto Bushido, who did a project for an RPG last year, and one of the rewards for the project was a hand-forged katana forged from the steel of a motorcycle drive chain. And he was very clear that it was going to be a real weapon and it was going to be sharp and all that stuff. And I was like, dude, I love this and I want it, but we can't have it on Kickstarter, no weapons. He was really nice about it, though. He's very understanding.
That's probably the coolest project reward I've ever heard.
It was pretty cool, and it hurt me to have to ask him to take it out. So
I would also say, there in talking to people about doing Kickstarter projects a lot, there's a lot of folk wisdom about what is and is not allowed on Kickstarter, and a lot of it is wrong. People just have wrong beliefs and opinions about what Kickstarter's actual rules are. I think if you actually, for most people, if you just take the time to read go on Kickstarter's website and read the kind of rules of creating projects, which are really well written. It's all human readable language. It's pretty open. You can pretty much do, with the exception of some very common sense policies, you can pretty much do whatever you want creatively on the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as a reviewer, one thing that I will ask you, if I see your project and you have a static image that doesn't indicate any kind of gameplay, and your project description doesn't really tell me what you're making, just that maybe you're making something, I'm going to ask you to tell me more about what you're making, just because I'm trying to help. Really, anytime I ask you a question when I'm reviewing your project, I am trying to help you. I'm trying to help you make a better project. I'm trying to help you be successful. So anytime I say, hey, can you show me what you're up to? Can you show me what you're making? Can you maybe add a reward that allows people to get what you're making? That is me offering you some of my wisdom of reviewing thousands of games projects. Okay, moving on. Paul Peterson. Hello, my friends. Paul states, exclaims.
Is this famous game designer Paul Peterson, the creator of Smash Up and Guillotine?
I think this might be him, unless there's another Paul Peterson in the world. There are probably many. How often should a Kickstarter be updated? What do you think about using a mailing list for one Kickstarter to announce the next one?
So I have a little bit of I've kind of experimented with project updates. So I've done some projects like Cards Against Humanity is one example where we pretty much did an update every week, whether we had something to say or not, and we just wanted to give people, the thought behind that is we want to give people a feeling of participation in the project. And I've also done projects where I said in advance, I'm not going to update this project every week. I'm only going to make an update when I have new things to share. And I kind of did, I tried to do both extremes because I wanted to see, I was curious what worked and what didn't and what did people like. And I will say, updating every week, you'd think it might be annoying for people, but in general, people are pretty appreciative just to have you check in and to follow along with the progress. And when I did my werewolf project and I updated much less frequently, I only updated that when there was big news I needed to share with people. People flipped out. They thought I was abandoning the project, and it really upset them. So I definitely, from my experience, I will never do a project again where I don't plan to do an update at least every other week, if not every week. I think people just appreciate that regular, steady contact of, even if you have nothing to say, you just say, everything's the same, I'm still working on the project, I'm still alive, here's where we are.
Yeah, I've done two projects. I did a games project where we plan pretty regular updates, and then I did a comics project where I just updated when stuff happened. And comics projects are actually pretty slow. I mean, we're not playtesting anything. We're not getting little cool bits and bobs for the comic. We're just making a comic book, and it takes a long time. And it infuriated the backers to only be updated when things happened. So like I announced like, okay, shipping from the factory, and that takes 3 months to ship from the factory. And then so I figure I've done my due diligence. Absolutely not. I got a steady stream of comments through that quiet period, people saying, I'm worried, where's the project, what's going on? Even though I had absolutely nothing to say except it's on a boat.
And that's and the thing to keep, not to be arrogant about it or whatever, but like I have done many Kickstarter projects, and I have a track record of like making things and shipping them and fulfilling my obligations. And Luke works at, in addition to having also made projects before, Luke works at Kickstarter, and we both had backers mad when we didn't update, who felt like we were cheating them or scamming them or not fulfilling our obligations. So I can only imagine that would be worse if it's your first project and people are even more nervous about whether you're going to ship or not. So I guess it sounds like hearing Luke's story about this. My advice would definitely be plan to do regular updates until you ship.
Yeah, and so just to kind of jump to the other side of this for a second, I think it's great that y'all are so excited about updates. Like, I think it's great that people are following along with the projects and that they're checking in with them and they're concerned about how it's going and the progress and whatnot. So that should be a cue to project creators to stay engaged with that. Those people are going to be your hardcore fans. They're going to be the people that stay with you from project to project to project if you can satisfy that need. Of course, right, you don't want to spam people. You want to find that nice pace where people feel attended to, but they don't feel overwhelmed. But I think it's I think there's a lot of cool energy around projects, and when we should be excited and we should stay involved. And then Paul also asked about using a mailing list for one Kickstarter to announce the next one. It seems to be a pretty common practice, and I think that the people who supported one project are probably okay with hearing about what else you're doing. I think that they signed on to support you. They probably would be even disappointed if you didn't tell them. But there's a limit. I've seen some projects go overboard using their updates to notify backers. So just be polite, really. Just be polite, be considerate. Consider how much email that you're getting and how much email you want your backers to get. Don't think of your backers as a money sponge that you're just wringing out trying to get every nickel from them. Your backers are people, and they're enthusiastic about what you made. They want to help you make other things. So that's a virtuous relationship. So be nice to them.
Another practice is sometimes people will do like a cross-promotional deal where one Kickstarter will say like, hey, my friend's doing this project, and they both email each other's backer lists. I'm less of a fan of that. I can see I think sometimes it works if they're very related or similar projects, or if there's some like you can use this thing with that thing. If they fit together naturally, I think it's okay, but I would generally classify like cross-promoting Kickstarters to each other as the same kind of like sort of manipulative marketing as like stretch goals or limited tiers or things like that make me feel bad. It makes me feel like someone's mostly just using Kickstarter as like a commerce platform or a store instead of that gift exchange that I think is a much better relationship. But that's also maybe just my personal taste.
Sure. Cool. All right, Paul. Hope that answered your question. Mike Van Helder asks, are there any common factors that a project likely to fund but then fails Are there any common factors that a project likely to fund but then fails?
He wants to know like for games that don't ever ship, how do you tell as a backer?
Oh yeah.
I don't think there are that many games that don't ship. I mean, it's such a rare occurrence.
It is true. The percentage of games that fulfill is it vastly overshadows the problem projects. But I think like asking how to be a good backer and how, what to look for in a project, I think that's a valid question. So one of the things that I think is often overlooked on a Kickstarter project are the risks and challenges. I think that both backers and creators overlook this. I think it's a really excellent place for backers to be very skeptical. If somebody is being very blithe in their risks and challenges and saying, hey, yeah, no problem, I am always worried when they do that. I always look harder at their project because they're not telling the truth. Every project has risks. Like everyone has experiences or gaps in their experience that that they could be honest with you about. Like my comic book project, I said straight out, like, I've published a lot of books, but I've never made a comic. So, I think I know what I'm doing, but we'll see. And that should be a warning sign. That should be a red flag to you, because making a comic is different than making a book. And so there's that. There's just looking at the project and making sure that they're being honest about what they're working on and what state of the progress they're at, what hurdles they have to overcome. But then the other side of it is, if you feel like the project in general is trying to oversell you on something or trying to sell you a bridge or something, be skeptical. Like, be a diligent backer. Ask them questions. Ask them questions about what they're making, what their progress is. Like, that is your responsibility as a backer, and it's a great responsibility. You get to have a relationship with somebody who's making something and be a part of the process, and your questions will make the end result better. I mean, obvious, like the warning signs, obviously are people who don't update and stuff like that. So, but it's very hard to look at a project when you're, in the early stages of it, when you're backing it and saying, and seeing if they're going to update further down the line. Everyone will promise to update now. Everyone in their risks and challenges says, I will update if anything happens, blah, blah, blah. But, look at what people have done previously, and I don't know, and don't be afraid to, bet on a long shot and back people who have crazy dreams and who have never done anything like this before, because they'll surprise you, and it'll be great.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you back a Kickstarter project, you're taking a risk, right? It's not a store. You're not shopping for something that already exists. You're kind of choosing to put your money behind something that you want to help try to make exist. So what I look for as a backer is, do I feel good giving this project money to try, even if I never get my reward? And so what I'm looking for is, like, is the person passionate about what they're making? Do they believe in it? Do they have, like, a great artistic vision? And if I give someone money, I've actually never backed a project that didn't fulfill. So I've never had any problems on backing projects. I backed something like over 100 projects on Kickstarter. I've never had one that had an issue fulfilling. But I always ask myself, if I give this person $20 for this book or this game, and they try to make it and they fail, do I still feel good having given my money to help this person, in their career as an artist? And if the answer is yes, it's an easy $20.
Yeah, cool. All right, back to Eric Portney. Hello, Eric. Lots of questions today. The advantages of using Kickstarter are huge, but has it become mandatory for success? With board games specifically, do you feel like Kickstarter has changed the landscape to the point indie games are now at a significant disadvantage to not use Kickstarter? Ooh. It's a good question. If one goes to Gen Con or Origins or even PAX, Kickstarter is just part of the conversation there as far as like how one makes games. I do not think it's mandatory. I think if you ask Fantasy Flight or Wizards of the Coast or Z-Man Games or Asmodee or Days of Wonder, like I don't think any of those people are going to tell you that it's mandatory to make a game.
Yeah, I mean, go to Gen Con or PAX or any of the shows where there's a tabletop section, and 90% of the floor space and sales are taken up by game publishers who have never done a Kickstarter and don't seem like they're about to start. And people reselling Magic cards and people selling publishers selling new games and show exclusives and stuff they have. Like there are at Gen Con, like there are tons of Kickstarter games and indie games, but it's still a really new movement. Like I still feel like it's just a foot in the door kind of a situation. It's not like everyone who's successful at Gen Con has had to go through the rite of passage of doing a Kickstarter or something like that. I'm glad of how quick it's taking off and how viable of an alternative it's becoming, but I don't think it's there yet that we need to worry about it being like the new Godzilla or whatever.
Right. Also, I think in this question is there's an implication of success if one is publishing an indie board game and one uses Kickstarter, one will be successful, which is just not the case. Board games, tabletop games, card games, miniatures games are beloved on Kickstarter. There's an incredible community and audience here on Kickstarter for these types of games, and it's really exciting for me since I'm a huge fan of these games. I make them myself. But like being on Kickstarter, just creating a game and launching on Kickstarter does absolutely not guarantee you success. You have to do a lot of work both on the game and on building a community around your game before you can come to Kickstarter and have an easy success. It's not that there aren't surprise hits. It's not that people don't find really cool things on Kickstarter that gain momentum and become funded. But to really be successful, you have to do a lot of homework before you come to Kickstarter.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is like I'm not sure. I'm also just not sure. Like fundamentally, this is not, for me at least. This isn't the right way to look at Kickstarter. Kickstarter is just a tool for funding a creative idea without a ton of risk. It's not Kickstarter's not this like monolithic thing. So I imagine it's like in the '90s where there are people talking about board games saying like, what is this like internet thing? I hear you have to have a website for your game to be successful. Like, do you have to have a website for your game to be successful? Not really, but it's like a good, it's a great way to have your fans find out about your game and get in touch with you and interact with it. It's just a tool. It's just this new way of getting information to people and allowing them to participate in the creative process.
Yeah, cool.
I have a couple Twitter questions. Do you want to do some of those, Luke?
Yep, perfect.
Sure. Surprisingly, a good number of questions about as for people who wanted to find out about the different Kickstarter's cut of a project and then any other fees and taxes at play to account for when you're planning a project.
So it is what's Kickstarter's cut of a project and any fees and taxes involved in running a project?
Yeah, so I would sort of interpret it as like when you're planning a project, what money do you need to set aside for things that aren't making a game?
Sure.
And I actually don't really know the deal with taxes for Kickstarter. Luckily, like other guys in cards deal with that stuff.
Well, I believe that Kickstarter has a taxes page. Let me see here if I can find the URL. So Kickstarter's fee, no, that's not it, is 5%. Of a successful project. If your project doesn't fund, we don't take anything. And if you go to kickstarter.com/help/taxes, we have a guide for your accountant.
Sure. I should probably read that.
Forward slashes. Oh my God! I don't know why I'm backslashing. Sorry. Fortunately, I have a little / bird in my ear. Anyway, Kickstarter.com/help/taxes. Sorry, I just like to say the word backslash. So how do taxes work on Kickstarter? So I'm not an accountant. I can't give tax advice. However, in general, income from your Kickstarter project is going to count as income for you. You will probably be able to expense some of that income for what you're making. You should consider what you take in from Kickstarter as income.
I like your not an accountant disclaimer. Is that like it's like if someone asks if you're an accountant, you can't lie about it. It's like a cop, like you can't lie about being an accountant.
I was cursed by a witch as a child. asked if I was an accountant. I had to say no. I had to answer truthfully.
All right, what do we? Here's a good question. What do we disagree about regarding Kickstarter? Well, I know the big one is I think that the best project has one reward, and then every reward you add, and every line of text, and every single thing you put on the page is like a cost. So it makes it harder for people to understand the project, harder for them to decide to back it, harder for them to get involved. So I think a project with 2 rewards is worse than 1 reward. A project with 3 is worse than 2. And once you get like 10 rewards and you need like an infographic to explain all of the stretch goals and rewards, the project is a mess, and no one could possibly ever love it or appreciate it. And I think Luke feels differently.
If you look at my projects, they're not quite as simple as Max's. Like I'm comfortable with offering, what we're making in addition to an experience. Like I offer signed copies of my books. I offered admission to a gaming event as part of my project. I offered super deluxe versions of the book, handmade leather-bound madness, that were really, really cool. And for the comics project, we offered painting lessons by the author. But to Max's point, nobody wanted that. Nobody backed for that. So I think focusing a Kickstarter project on like you and your experience and what you're making is key. I think turning it into like a bonkers spreadsheet is not my favorite thing. I'm certainly. I mean, there is a subset of backers who love that stuff and who only back projects for that stuff. I am not one of them. What else? We disagree on something else too. There's something really fundamental that we disagree on. I cannot remember what it is. We talked about this last year. Oh well.
That was it, right? I mean, I always tell people like do the least amount possible, and I don't know. Anyway, Chris has a question. Chris, creator of one of my favorite games, Sentinels of the Multiverse, and successful project creator.
Well.
What are the dangers of Kickstarter going forward? Is Kickstarter becoming less open and available to newcomer project creators? Is there data? Luke, do you have any data on that? Like, is it harder for small projects to get funded as Kickstarter matures?
No, yeah. The data shows the other one. Shows exactly the opposite. The data shows that as Kickstarter gets bigger, the pie gets bigger. It's not that Kickstarter is becoming less open or unavailable to newcomers. It's that more and more people are becoming exposed to Kickstarter, and that means more creators, more backers, more projects, and more money. It might not be growing exponentially like it was in the first few years. I think that the platform has matured a lot, and the backers have become very sophisticated as to what they're backing for. But it's still growing, and it's growing for newcomers and otherwise. What are the
we probably have time for one more quick one.
Well, wait. I want to go to what's the first part of Chris's question mean? What are the dangers of Kickstarter going forward?
I think I would just interpret it as like, what are the risks to Kickstarter as a platform? Like, I mean, I'm interested in that. Like, what do you see as like, as Kickstarter is becoming a more and more kind of establishment thing? Like, what are the big concerns for you guys institutionally?
That's an amazing question. We just want to make sure that we stay focused on our vision and the spirit of Kickstarter, and just making sure that creative projects have a safe place to be weird and an audience to ask for weird things. An audience to ask to come play your games or to give you money to go eat a burrito or something like that. Like, we just want to make sure that Kickstarter is always a platform for people to make these awesome things that wouldn't be made anywhere else. And that's really, really hard as the platform gets bigger and bigger. It's a discussion that we're constantly having. It's something that we're very concerned with.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit of there's this thing in psychology called the availability heuristic. I just learned about this, so it's like learning a new word and then you hear it everywhere. But I just learned about this, and now I see it everywhere, where it's like people tend to they see the world according to the data that they have. So it's like, back in the day, a few years ago, everyone heard about Kickstarter and they heard about these really scrappy, quirky projects of like, oh, I'm making this craft thing, or I'm making a tiny little indie game, or I'm making this small little thing. And now people hear about Kickstarter, and it's in the New York Times, and it's these big, it's like Zach Braff is making a film, or Veronica Mars is making a film, or Double Fine Adventure made $3 million. So it's like the availability heuristic just tells you that the platform is becoming like bigger and more institutionalized, and it's these huge projects. But I think if you take a closer look, like the actual ecosystem of Kickstarter has never been better for like tiny little games and local projects and small niche things. Just because the other things are getting more attention too doesn't mean that it's changed as a great home for weird little projects.
Yeah, I can say with certainty that there are more and more like weird little projects coming to the platform, and they're fantastic. Makes you really happy.
And as a creator of many weird little projects, like I actually loved it. Like back in when we started Cards Against Humanity on Kickstarter, we had to explain like what is Kickstarter, why are we using it. I love that I don't have to explain that anymore. Like people trust Kickstarter. It's a proven method, and I don't have to justify myself or feel like I'm like on the B team for doing a Kickstarter project. I feel like I'm making art along with artists that I love, who I really respect, and I love how they make stuff. I feel great making a game the same way that Double Fine makes a game.
Yeah, it's awesome. Anyway, so we're about out of time. So I wanted to say two things. That if you like this and if you found it useful, let me know. You can write me at games@kickstarter.com. I'd love to hear your feedback if you want us to do another one of these, or if you want us to do it in a particular way. I'd love to hear from you. So games@kickstarter.com. Also, are we announcing anything here, Max, today?
Yeah, sure. What the hell? We can say for the 3 people who are watching. So Luke, about a year ago, Luke and I did this thing called Kickstarter Office Hours, and it just sort of started as this really informal thing where I just made a blog post and I said like, if you're working on a project, we'll set aside a few hours a week and we'll meet with people every week and just talk about their projects and see what we can learn from talking to people. So I think Luke and I have been talking about bringing that back, and hopefully I think we'll have I'm putting together a little website and like a sign-up form. Hopefully we'll have something up pretty soon, and we're going to bring back Kickstarter Office Hours and set aside a few hours a week to talk to people about new projects.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited to get back to talking to you all and workshopping your projects. So, all right, so look out for Kickstarter Office Hours with Max and Luke coming soon. And and again, if you have any questions or concerns or feedback, you can email me at games@kickstarter.com. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. This was fun.